Have you ever had a moment where the entire architecture of your life is revealed to be a facade? Not a sudden demolition, but a slow, creeping realization that the walls you thought were solid are just canvas. The foundation you thought was rock is just sand. You press a hand to it, gently at first, and your fingers sink right through into a cold, empty void. You realize you've been living in a dollhouse, exquisitely designed to fool you, and you were the only one who didn't know. This isn't a story that happens with a scream. It happens in silence. My world, my 4-year masterpiece of a life, didn't end with a bang. It ended at 2:17 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. The only sounds in the universe were the low electric hum of our refrigerator cycling on and the frantic, syncopated rhythm of my own heart. A desperate drumbeat against my ribs, signaling a catastrophic failure of everything I held to be true. That was the moment. The moment the pale, bluish glow of my laptop screen illuminated a truth so grotesque, so profoundly and intentionally cruel, that my mind initially refused to process it. The truth that Liam, my Liam, the man I had woven my life, my future, and my entire soul around for 4 years, the man who had held my face in his hands, his eyes brimming with what I mistook for sincere tears, and told me he needed space to heal his inner child, to confront his trauma, all so he could finally be the man that I deserved, had actually just been meticulously, strategically clearing a path. He wasn't on a solo journey of healing. He was on an accelerated path to a new life, a life with a girl from our hometown, a girl I barely remembered, a girl whose name had never once passed his lips in all the years I'd known him, and he had gotten her pregnant. The most nauseating part of it all? The part that still, to this day, can make my stomach clench with a hot, acidic shame. I didn't just believe his lies. I became their curator. I championed his healing journey. I defended it to my friends, my family, and most vehemently, to the growing, screaming doubt in my own gut. I was his biggest cheerleader, waving my metaphorical pom-poms from the sidelines of a game I didn't even know I was no longer a player in. This is the full story, and I'm telling you every last detail, because details are where the truth lives, and where the lies unravel. It's messy, and it's ugly. It's about how love can be twisted and weaponized, how the modern language of therapy can become a cloak for the oldest, most basic forms of betrayal. But it's also the story of what happens when the grief finally burns itself out, when the tears run dry and leave behind something cold, hard, and as clear as glass. It's the story of what I did when I decided that karma, every now and then, could use a well-planned, perfectly executed helping hand. To understand the sheer depth of the betrayal, you have to understand what we had. You have to see it the way I saw it. My life with Liam wasn't just happy, it was my masterpiece. We met at the University of Texas in Austin, a sprawling campus of burnt orange and youthful ambition. It feels like a different lifetime now. He was a literature major, a beautiful cliché. I first saw him under the majestic, sprawling oaks on the South Mall, completely absorbed in a worn copy of Steinbeck's East of Eden. He had this gravitational pull, a quiet intensity that made him seem like an old soul. I, a business major, lived in a world of spreadsheets, deadlines, and 5-year plans. He lived in a world of poetry, philosophy, and the subtle genius of a film's score. He was the beautiful, welcome chaos to my rigid order. Our first date was at a tiny, perpetually crowded coffee shop on Guadalupe Street, what the students call the drag. I remember the air was thick with the smell of roasted coffee beans and old books. I was so jittery, a bundle of nerves and excitement, that I gestured too wildly while making a point and sent my full latte cascading across my notebook, creating a Rorschach blot of brown liquid. I was mortified, but he didn't laugh or flinch. He just calmly grabbed a fistful of napkins from the dispenser, and as he helped me blot the pages, he started talking in his low, soothing voice about the Japanese art of kintsugi, how broken pottery is mended with gold, making it more beautiful for having been broken. He made my clumsiness feel profound. We sat in that coffee shop for 4 hours, until the barista was passive-aggressively stacking chairs on the tables around us. It felt less like a first date, and more like picking up a conversation with someone I'd known for centuries. After graduation, we made the leap together. We packed all our belongings into a U-Haul and drove north to Dallas. We found a one-bedroom apartment in the heart of Uptown, a place with high ceilings and what the realtor grandly called a Juliet balcony, which in reality was a decorative iron railing that could barely hold a single potted plant. But to us, it was our castle. We spent our first weekend there painting the living room a soft sage green. We got more paint on ourselves and the floor than on the walls, and we collapsed onto a drop cloth, exhausted and happy, eating pizza straight from the box and mapping out our entire future. That apartment became the vessel of our life. A few months in, we adopted Bowie, a clumsy golden retriever puppy who chewed on the leg of our new coffee table but had the most soulful, human-like eyes. Our life found a rhythm, a comfortable, beautiful, and sacred routine. Saturday mornings were for long, rambling walks around White Rock Lake, the Dallas skyline shimmering like a mirage in the distance. We'd let Bowie off his leash and watch him run, and we'd talk. God, we'd talk for hours. About his dream of leaving his corporate graphic design job to open his own small studio. About my ambitions to climb the ladder at the marketing firm I'd joined. Our dreams were so deeply interwoven, it was impossible to see where his ended and mine began. We had our sacred spots, the tiny taqueria that served breakfast tacos that could cure any ailment, the Angelica Film Center, where we'd sit in the dark and hold hands, seeing obscure indie films and then dissecting them for hours afterward. Our booth, the one in the back corner of a dive bar called The Old Monk, where on Tuesday nights he would so patiently try to teach me the geometry of a perfect pool shot, his hand gently guiding mine on the cue. I remember meeting his parents for the first time. We drove out to their sterile, oversized house in a soulless suburb. His father was a quiet, emotionally distant man. His mother was a bundle of nervous energy, fluttering around us, constantly asking if we needed anything. The air was thick with unspoken resentments. During dinner, his mother made a passive-aggressive comment about his father's new, younger secretary. Liam just expertly changed the subject, a practiced maneuver. On the drive home, he was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at me and said, "That's what I never want for us. That quiet bitterness. I want us to always talk." That night, I held him a little tighter, feeling like I was the safe harbor from his family's storm. I didn't realize he was just taking notes on which emotional wounds to use as an alibi later. He was so deeply, achingly thoughtful. It's the small things that haunt me the most. The winter I had a terrible flu, he not only made me soup, he built a pillow fort in the living room so I could be comfortable, and he sat with me all weekend, reading aloud to me from The Lord of the Rings in all the different character voices. The time I was passed over for a promotion at work and came home utterly defeated, he didn't just offer platitudes. He drew me a hot bath, lit candles, and then sat on the floor next to the tub while I cried, just listening, not trying to fix it, just being present. For our 3rd anniversary, he didn't buy jewelry. He gave me a framed, custom-designed star chart, meticulously plotting what the constellations looked like over Austin on the exact night of our first date. Above it, he'd written, "The night my universe shifted." He was my person, my anchor, the one fixed, undeniable truth in my life. And everyone saw it. My mom, a pragmatist who trusted no one, was completely won over. "He adores you, Maya," she'd say to me after every visit. "You can see it in the way he looks at you when you're not looking at him." There was simply no version of my future I could conjure that didn't have him standing right there beside me. The change, when it came, was like a single thread being pulled from a tightly woven tapestry. At first, you don't even notice, but slowly, imperceptibly, the whole thing begins to warp. It began, I think, about 6 months before the end. The vibrant, technicolor world we had built began to slowly fade, desaturating into a dull, lonely grayscale. The conversations, the lifeblood of our connection, became clipped and shallow. My "How was your day?" was met with a "fine" instead of a detailed, funny story. He started coming home from his job, giving me a brief, obligatory kiss on the cheek, and then immediately plugging into his noise-canceling headphones, his back to me, staring at his computer screen for hours on end, working on what he vaguely described as personal projects. The physical intimacy vanished, but it was the withdrawal of small affections that hurt the most. He stopped reaching for my hand when we were driving. He stopped putting his arm around me when we watched TV. When I'd try to climb into bed and curl up against his back, his body, which had always been my safe place, would be rigid and unresponsive. He'd mumble a tired, "I'm exhausted, babe," and gently roll away, leaving a cold, vast expanse of mattress between us that felt as wide and as desolate as a desert. I tried, with increasing desperation, to bridge that chasm. "Liam, what's happening? Please just talk to me. We can fix anything, but you have to let me in." And that's when the new language began to poison our home. It was like he'd been given a script, a lexicon of deflection. It wasn't him being distant. It was his avoidant attachment style flaring up. He wasn't unhappy with us, God no. He was simply overwhelmed by an existential dread. He told me he was starting therapy. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated relief. I thought, this is it. This is the breakthrough. He's taking action. He's fighting for us. I became his most ardent supporter. That's incredible, Liam. I am so, so proud of you. Whatever you need, I am here. We are a team. You are not alone in this. He would come home from his weekly sessions and unload this new vocabulary on me like a lecture. He spoke of the generational trauma passed down from his parents' acrimonious divorce, a wound he claimed he'd never properly dealt with. He talked about the need to reparent his inner child, to sit with his discomfort, to interrogate his own toxic patterns. It all sounded so evolved, so emotionally intelligent, so brave. I was in awe of his commitment to self-improvement. I didn't recognize that he wasn't using therapy to heal. He was using its language to build an unbreachable fortress around his lies. I want to pause here and ask you, have you ever been in that position where someone you love, someone you trust implicitly, starts using the very language of intimacy, vulnerability, and healing to create distance? To make you feel like your needs, your confusion, your hurt are an obstacle to their personal growth? Let me know in the comments, because for months, I felt like I was losing my mind. I felt like a selfish, unenlightened monster for wanting my boyfriend back when he was on this sacred journey. The fortress walls grew higher and thicker every week. His need for alone time became all-consuming. He'd go for these long 4-hour drives to process his thoughts. He started spending entire weekends at his parents' empty, musty lake house in East Texas. He claimed he needed the absolute solitude to meditate, journal, and reconnect with his core self. And I let him go. Every time. I'd pack him a small cooler with his favorite sandwiches and La Croix. I'd kiss him goodbye at the door and say, "I hope you find what you're looking for." And I'd spend the weekend rattling around our silent apartment, devouring articles online, how to support a partner through a depressive episode, understanding avoidant attachment. I became a scholar of his pain, an expert in swallowing my own needs, in making myself smaller, quieter, and less demanding. I was so convinced that my patience, my unwavering support, would be the reward at the end of his pilgrimage. I thought I was holding down the fort until my soldier came home from his inner war. I didn't realize he had already deserted his post. I remember one night, I tried to break the spell. I planned a perfect date night in. I cooked his favorite meal, cacio e pepe, from scratch. I opened a bottle of the good red wine we were saving. I wore a dress I knew he loved. I thought, I can fix this. I can remind him of what we have. He came home, saw the table, and gave me a sad, weary smile. "Oh, Maya," he said. "This is so sweet. You shouldn't have." We ate in near silence. He barely touched his food. He answered my questions with one-word answers, his eyes distant. He complimented the meal the way you'd compliment a stranger. After dinner, he said he was feeling overstimulated and needed to lie down in a dark room. I sat at that beautifully set table, alone, surrounded by the remnants of my failed attempt, and I felt a cold, deep dread. But I still told myself, this is the depression. This isn't him. The end, when it finally came, was on a Tuesday in April. I remember the date, the weather, the shirt I was wearing, with a horrifying, crystalline clarity. We were supposed to go play trivia at the Old Monk, our pub. It was the first normal couple thing he'd agreed to do in months, and I was clinging to it like a life raft, buzzing with a fragile, desperate hope. I was in our bathroom, carefully applying mascara, humming along to a hopeful playlist, when he appeared in the reflection of the mirror behind me. His face was ashen, his expression impossibly grave. It was the face of a man about to deliver a death sentence. "Maya," he said, his voice quiet and formal. "We need to talk." That's the sentence that precedes every emotional car crash, isn't it? My stomach didn't just drop, it evaporated. I placed the mascara wand on the counter, my hand suddenly trembling so violently I had to clench it into a fist. He led me to the living room and sat me down on our sage green couch, the couch we had picked out together. He didn't sit beside me. In a gesture of such calculated, theatrical tenderness that it makes me physically ill to remember it, he knelt on the floor in front of me, taking both of my hands in his. Then, he delivered his speech. It was a monologue, really, a rehearsed, polished, soul-crushing masterpiece of manipulative theater. He started by telling me how much he loved me, that I was the most incredible, compassionate, and beautiful woman he had ever known, the best thing that had ever happened to him. My heart, against all odds, began to beat with a tiny, stupid pulse of hope. And then came the turn. The but. "And that," he said, his voice cracking on cue as he looked up at me, his eyes welling with perfectly formed tears, "is exactly the problem. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you, Maya." He told me he was fundamentally broken, that his trauma, his deep-seated demons, were casting a toxic shadow on our beautiful relationship. He said he saw the toll his depression was taking on me, saw the light dimming in my eyes, and he couldn't bear to be the cause of it. "It wasn't fair to me," he said, "to be anchored to someone so lost at sea." "I have to do this, Maya," he whispered, a single perfect tear tracing a path down his handsome, lying cheek. "I have to let you go so I can finally fix myself. I have to be completely, utterly alone to do this work. I can't be the partner you deserve, the husband you deserve, until I figure out how to be a whole person on my own. I am doing this for us, for our future, so that when I come back to you, I can love you the way you are truly meant to be loved." He was breaking up with me for my own good. It was the most diabolical, airtight excuse I have ever heard in my life. It was a masterstroke of emotional hostage-taking. There was no counter-argument. How can you rage against someone's quest for self-improvement? How can you demand they stay with you when they claim they are too broken to be worthy? To argue, to scream, to cry, "Don't leave me," would be to prove his entire point, that I was selfish, that I didn't care about his well-being. So I did nothing. I just sat there, a hollowed-out shell, shattered and silent, tears streaming down my face as I listened to the man I loved dismantle our life with the careful precision of a surgeon. I nodded. I accepted my fate. He held me then, a long, hollow hug that felt like a final goodbye, his body stiff and distant, even in embrace. He whispered again into my hair, "This isn't forever, Maya. It's just for now." He laid out the terms of his healing, at least 6 months of absolute no contact. No texts, no calls, no checking social media. He claimed it was the only way he could avoid using me as an emotional crutch and truly, authentically heal. He packed a single duffel bag that night, just the essentials. As he was leaving, he paused at the door and looked back at me, his face a perfect mask of tragic, romantic sorrow. The next morning, a single text message appeared on my phone, the final twist of the knife. "This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I love you more than you'll ever know." And I, the world's most devoted fool, texted back, "I love you too. I'll be here." The first few weeks were a descent into a special kind of hell. The apartment, once our vibrant, noisy home, became an echo chamber of his absence. His coffee mug was still in the dish rack. His scent, a mix of sandalwood and citrus, lingered on his pillow. I would walk into the grocery store and instinctively reach for his favorite brand of IPA before a fresh wave of grief would crash over me, right there in the beer aisle, my hand frozen in midair. I respected his no-contact rule as if it were a sacred religious vow. It was a daily act of self-torture. Each day I didn't text him. I told myself I was helping him heal, that I was earning points for our future reconciliation. I wrote him long, rambling letters in the Notes app on my phone, pouring out my heartbreak, my loneliness, my unwavering belief in him. And then I would delete them, one by one. My friends tried. Chloe would drag me out for dinner, but I was a ghost at the table, just pushing food around my plate, replaying his breakup speech in my head, analyzing it for clues, for hope. My mother, on the phone, was more direct. "Maya, honey," she said, her voice laced with a gentle skepticism I couldn't bear. "I love you. But when a 28-year-old man tells you he needs 6 months of solitude to find himself, he's usually finding himself in another woman's apartment." I got angry with her. "You don't know him like I do, Mom," I snapped. "He's not like that. He's doing the hard work." I was defending the architect of my own heartbreak. The first crack in my carefully constructed reality appeared on a Saturday in July, about 3 months into his journey. I was at Chloe's apartment, listlessly scrolling through my phone. She was on her own laptop, and she suddenly stopped typing. "Huh, that's weird," she said, squinting at her screen. "What is?" I asked, my voice flat. "Isn't that Liam?" She turned her laptop towards me. My breath hitched in my throat. It was a photo, posted on Facebook by a guy I vaguely recognized from our high school. It was a big, boisterous group shot, taken on the sun-drenched patio of a rustic-looking brewery. A brewery in our hometown, an hour's drive away. And there, right in the middle of the laughing crowd, was Liam. He didn't look gaunt and soulful. He wasn't meditating on a dock. He was beaming, his face tan and relaxed, a pint of beer raised in the air. His other arm was draped comfortably, possessively, around the shoulders of a blonde girl. "Who is that girl?" I asked, my voice a thin, reedy whisper. Chloe leaned closer to the screen. "I think her name's Brooke Jensen," she said slowly. "She was a year or 2 behind us in school. Kind of a party girl from what I remember. I didn't even know they were friends." She clicked on the tag over Brooke's name. Her profile was private. A cold, sick dread washed over me, so intense it was almost dizzying. "He's supposed to be alone," I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "He's at his parents' lake house, journaling." "Maybe he just took a weekend off?" Chloe offered, though her voice lacked any real conviction. "He's allowed to see old friends, right?" But it felt fundamentally wrong. It felt like a violation of the sacred terms of our agreement. What would you have done? Would you have picked up the phone, your fingers trembling with rage, and demanded an explanation? Or would you have done what I did? I chose denial. I rationalized it. I told myself I was being paranoid, controlling. I buried the image deep down in the recesses of my mind and tried to pour concrete over it. But the seed of doubt was planted, and over the next few weeks, it was watered by a slow, agonizing drip of contradictory information. Another friend, Sarah, called me one day. "Hey, this is so random," she said, "but I was driving through your hometown last week, and I swear I saw Liam's car parked on Maple Street. I thought it was weird because I know Mark lives way over on the west side of town." I told her she must have been mistaken. But I looked up Maple Street. It was a quiet, residential street of small starter homes. Another time, I noticed on his public Venmo feed, nestled between payments to Mark for rent, a payment to a local bar back home for trivia night. The memo was a single beer emoji, the same trivia night we used to go to. The atom bomb that finally, irrevocably obliterated my denial came on a Wednesday night in late August. I was at home, trying to lose myself in a novel, when my phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. It was just 5 words that would detonate my entire world. "Maya, call me. Right now." The raw urgency in it made my blood run cold. I called her, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. "Chloe, what's wrong? You're scaring the hell out of me." She took a deep, shaky breath, and I could hear the profound pity in her voice. "Okay, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it. My cousin Jenna, you know she's still friends with Brooke Jensen's older sister. Well, Jenna was on Facebook, and Brooke's mom, she just posted something, a link." "A link to what?" I asked, my voice a hoarse whisper. "It's a baby registry," Chloe said, her voice strained and quiet. "On the Bye Bye Baby website." The words didn't compute. They were just sounds, foreign and nonsensical. Baby, registry. They floated in the air, refusing to land. "The registry," Chloe continued, her voice incredibly gentle, as if she were speaking to a wounded animal. "The names on it are Brooke Jensen and Liam." The phone felt slick and heavy in my hand. The room began to tilt, the walls seeming to warp and bend. "No," I breathed. "No, that can't be right." "Maya," Chloe said, her voice breaking with sympathy. "The due date is listed on the registry. It's in 4 months. December." December. My brain, slow and sluggish like it was moving through concrete, began to perform the terrible, horrifying arithmetic. December was 9 months from March. He had left me at the beginning of April. He had gotten this girl pregnant before he even delivered his beautiful, tragic, tear-filled monologue about needing to heal himself for me. The entire healing journey, from start to finish, had been a lie, a cover story, a meticulously constructed alibi for starting a new life. I don't remember hanging up the phone. I just remember the clatter of it hitting the hardwood floor. I stumbled to my laptop, my body moving on a jerky, disconnected autopilot. My fingers, numb and clumsy as if they belonged to someone else, typed Brooke's mother's name into the Facebook search bar. Her profile was public. Of course it was. People bursting with happy news want the world to know. And there it was. The top post on her page, shared just an hour before, already littered with congratulatory comments. The link to the registry. And above it, a caption written in a sickeningly cheerful, exclamation point-laden script. "I can finally share the wonderful news my heart has been bursting to tell. My beautiful daughter Brooke and the wonderful, kind-hearted Liam are expecting a baby boy this winter. I cannot wait to be a grandma. So proud of the beautiful, loving life you two are building together." And the picture. The picture was the final, twisting, eviscerating knife. It was them, Liam and Brooke, standing in a field of iconic Texas bluebonnets, the sun setting behind them in a cinematic blaze of orange and pink. He was standing behind her, his arms wrapped securely around her waist, his hands resting on her small, but undeniably, unmistakably pregnant stomach. He was kissing her temple, his eyes closed in a look of serene, profound contentment, and she was beaming, radiating a kind of triumphant, possessive joy that felt like a physical assault. A sound ripped its way out of my throat. It was not human. It was a raw, primitive wail of a creature caught in a trap. My legs gave out from under me, and I crumpled to the cold, hardwood floor of my apartment. And I sobbed. I sobbed with a violence that shook my entire body, a storm of grief so absolute it felt like it would tear me apart from the inside out. I sobbed for the 4 years, for the future we had planned in such intricate detail, for the star chart hanging on my bedroom wall, for the profound, gullible fool I had been. I lay on that floor for what felt like an eternity. The grief was a physical presence, a crushing weight on my chest, a fire in my lungs. But as the hours passed, as the first gray light of dawn began to creep through the blinds, something strange happened. The inferno of pain began to cool. The emotional flames died down, and they left behind something else in their wake. Not ashes, something hard and solid and cold. Rage. It was the quietest, coldest, most focused rage I have ever felt in my life. The victim on the floor was gone. The tears dried up. I sat up, pushed my tangled hair out of my face, and I started to think. He was not going to get away with this. He was not going to be the tragic, romantic hero of this story. He was not going to get his perfect, happy ending, his new house, his new baby, his new life, all built upon the foundations of my shattered heart and his pathological, self-serving lies. His carefully crafted bullshit healing journey was about to come to a very public, very spectacular, and very well-documented end. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, feeling a terrifying and exhilarating clarity. The world looked different, sharper. My hands were perfectly steady as I picked up my phone and dialed his number. He answered on the second ring, his voice wary, cautious. "Maya?" "Hello, Liam," I said. My voice was unnervingly calm, a placid lake surface with a monster lurking in its depths. "I saw the baby registry. I saw the picture. I think it's time you and I had a real conversation, don't you?" To my absolute astonishment, he tried to lie. At first, even with the evidence laid bare, his instinct was to squirm, to obfuscate. He stammered. He said it was complicated, that it wasn't what it looked like. "Really?" I said, my voice dripping with an Arctic sarcasm. "Because it looks exactly like you're having a baby with a girl you started dating while you were still living in my apartment and sleeping in my bed. Am I missing some crucial nuance here?" He was silent then. A long, damning silence. Then came the pathetic, sniveling excuses. It just happened. He was confused. He was going through a lot. "When, Liam?" I pressed, my voice like a surgeon's scalpel, precise and merciless. "When, exactly, did you get her pregnant? Was it in March? Was it before or after you were crying about your generational trauma, all over my shoulder, and telling me you were doing this for us?" His silence was his confession. Then I asked the question that I needed the answer to, the one that would fuel the fire of my next steps. "Why the lie, Liam? Why the whole elaborate, cruel, theatrical performance? If you wanted to be with her, why not just be a man and break up with me? Why the months of deception?" And his answer is what solidified my resolve and turned my rage into a mission. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said softly, as if this were a noble, selfless act. I almost choked. A sound that was half laugh, half sob escaped my lips. It was the most insane, insulting, narcissistic, and profoundly cowardly thing I have ever heard. He didn't want to hurt me, so he chose a path of prolonged psychological torture, letting me wait for him like a pathetic, loyal dog, only to find out through the town grapevine that he was starting a family with someone else. He hadn't done it to protect me. He had done it to protect himself from having to witness my pain, from having to be the bad guy in the story. That was it. That was the moment my vague, furious desire for revenge crystallized into a concrete, detailed, and multi-phased plan. It wasn't enough to just tell our friends. He had built an entire public persona, a brand, around being the sensitive, deep, evolved man. I wasn't just going to expose the lie. I was going to systematically dismantle his entire identity. And I was going to use his own preferred weapons against him. The language of support, forgiveness, and healing. Now, this is the part of the story where the moral lines get blurry. This is the part where you might start to judge my choices. And I need you to. I want you to. Tell me in the comments. What is the appropriate response to a betrayal this calculated, this cruel? Is there a line you shouldn't cross? And did I sprint right over it? My counteroffensive began with a single, perfectly composed text message, sent a week after that phone call, a week I spent doing my research. Liam, I've had a lot of time to process our conversation and the situation. I've moved through the initial stages of anger and grief. I realize now that your journey, while it has caused me immense and indescribable pain, is your own. In honor of the 4 years of love and life we shared, I want to find a way to support you and Brooke as you begin this new chapter. It's the only way I can find my own closure and truly begin to heal. Please, allow me to throw a baby shower for you both. The bait was in the water. He called me within minutes, his voice a frantic cocktail of suspicion, confusion, and, underneath it all, a dawning, narcissistic relief. Maya, what are you doing? You don't have to do that. That's crazy. This was my audition, my one-woman show. I summoned every ounce of Meryl Streep I had in me. I let my voice crack. I produced a few soft, choked-up sobs for effect. I told him that my own, fictional therapist had said that practicing radical acceptance was the key to my own healing. That holding on to bitterness was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That celebrating his joy, no matter how excruciating it was for me, was the ultimate act of setting myself free. I need to do this for me, Liam, I whispered tearfully into the phone. It's the only way I can ever truly let go and move on with my own life. He fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, because it was the story he desperately wanted to believe. It affirmed his entire narrative. Of course, the wonderful, compassionate, amazing Maya would handle this with this level of grace. It proved what a great guy he must be, that a woman he'd wronged so profoundly could still be so devoted and understanding. It wasn't about my healing, it was about his absolution. Convincing Brooke was even simpler. I staged the call carefully, my voice dripping with a syrupy, benevolent sweetness. I could hear the nervousness and intimidation in her voice. I was the ghost of her boyfriend's past, the serious, 4-year, big city relationship she probably felt she had to live up to. When I offered my unconditional support and friendship, her relief was so palpable, it was almost pathetic. "Oh my God, Maya," she gushed, her voice high and girlish. "That is so incredibly generous and big of you. I'm honestly speechless." "Don't be," I said warmly, as if I were a benevolent goddess bestowing a blessing. "We're all part of each other's stories now. The least we can do is fill the pages with kindness and love." I almost gagged, but I held it together. For the next 2 months, I became a whirlwind of party planning perfection. I was Martha Stewart with a heart full of napalm. I insisted it be a large, co-ed celebration of new life. I wanted a full audience. All our mutual college friends, his family, his work colleagues, my friends, everyone who had been fed the healing journey lie. I booked the private event space at a trendy, expensive restaurant in Dallas. I designed and sent out elegant, heavyweight, cream-colored invitations with tasteful blue lettering. The theme, I announced with a flourish in the group chat I created, was a new chapter. The irony was so thick, it was a meal in itself. I was terrifyingly efficient. I was relentlessly cheerful. I posted updates in the group chat about the catering choices, the floral arrangements, the custom cake. Liam and Brooke would chime in with comments like, "Maya, you're an absolute angel. We are so grateful." Our friends were astonished by my magnanimity. "You have more class and strength in your little finger than anyone I know," my friend Sarah texted me. I just replied with a prayer hands emoji. Inside, I was meticulously building a beautiful, ribbon-adorned Trojan horse. The centerpiece of my plan, the surprise gift from me to the happy couple, was to be a slideshow. A touching tribute to their unique love story, I told everyone who asked. I solicited photos from friends and family, and they sent them in droves. Happy, smiling snaps of the glowing couple. But my real work was done in the dead of night. I became a digital archaeologist, digging through the ruins of my own life. I spent hours scrolling back through years of timelines, taking crisp, clear screenshots, his breakup texts to me, the date-stamped brewery photo, other tagged photos from social media, check-ins from restaurants, comments between them, all piecing together the undeniable secret timeline of their affair. And of course, the public registry. Each screenshot was a carefully collected nail for the coffin of his public persona. I downloaded a video editing program and, fueled by coffee and rage, taught myself how to use it. I wove everything together into a 10-minute presentation, a devastating narrative of his deceit, all set to the gentle, melancholic notes of a solo piano piece. It was my masterpiece of destruction. The day of the shower was a perfect, sun-drenched Saturday in October. I chose my armor carefully, a simple, elegant navy blue sheath dress. I was the picture of serene, benevolent grace. I stood at the door of the private dining room, greeting every guest with a warm, genuine-looking smile and a hug. I hugged Liam's mother, who held my arms and looked at me with deep, sincere pity in her eyes. "You are a remarkable woman, Maya," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "He never deserved you." "We all follow our own paths," I replied serenely, my heart pounding a steady martial rhythm in my chest. I felt like a Bond villain in pearls. The party was a picture of perfection. Tables adorned with white linens and blue hydrangeas, a string trio playing softly in the corner, delicious food, expensive champagne. Liam and Brooke were seated at a decorated table at the front, opening an endless pile of expensive gifts, looking like the king and queen of their own deluded prom. He would catch my eye across the room from time to time and give me that small, grateful, condescending smile. The smile that said, "Thank you for being so convenient. Thank you for making my betrayal so utterly painless for me." Finally, the moment arrived. After the last gift was unwrapped and the decadent cake was served, I walked to the front of the room. I picked up a champagne flute and tapped it gently with a spoon. The cheerful chatter in the room died down. 50 pairs of eyes turned to me. "Hi, everyone," I began, my voice clear and ringing with a confidence I didn't know I possessed. "I just want to thank you all so much for coming today to celebrate Liam and Brooke. It's so beautiful to see them surrounded by so much love and support as they prepare to start this incredible new chapter." I turned my smile on them. It felt sharp enough to cut glass. As most of you know, Liam and I had our own long and meaningful chapter together. And in that time, he taught me so much. So much about love, about honesty, and about the profound importance of personal growth. So, as my final gift to them, my one true gift from the heart, I wanted to put together a little something to honor their truly unique journey. A little slideshow to look back at exactly how this beautiful, miraculous moment came to be. I gave a subtle nod to the AV technician I'd hired, and the lights in the room dimmed to a dramatic twilight. I clicked the first slide on the remote control I held in my steady hand. The slideshow began with a calculated innocence, a beautiful, sun-drenched photo of Liam and me on our first anniversary trip to Austin, young and goofy and so obviously in love. The caption, in an elegant script, read, Chapter 1, The Foundation, Austin, 2020. Another photo of us bringing a tiny Bowie home from the shelter, a bundle of golden fur. Building a life, day by day, choice by choice. Then, a handsome solo picture of Liam looking thoughtfully off into the distance. The caption, Then came the time for a personal journey. The next slide was a high-resolution screenshot, a close-up of his text message to me. I need to be alone. I need to truly, completely heal. I'm doing this for us. The date of the text, April 12th, was highlighted in a subtle but unmissable red circle. A few confused murmurs rippled through the silent room. The next slide was the brewery photo. Liam, arm slung casually around Brooke, both of them laughing without a care in the world. The original post date from Instagram, May 4th, was enlarged at the bottom. My caption, Healing often requires a strong and dedicated social support system. The murmuring grew louder, turning into audible whispers. Liam's blissful smile had vanished, replaced by a mask of bone-white shock. Brooke was staring at the screen, then at him, her smile frozen, a look of profound confusion on her face. Next slide, a Facebook check-in, a romantic candlelit Italian restaurant. Liam and Brooke tagged together. Date, June 10th. My caption, Sometimes the work of looking inward requires a +1. I could see Liam's mother in the front row. Her hand had flown to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. His best friend, Mark, who had undoubtedly been his accomplice, was staring at his shoes, his face a deep, mottled red. Slide. After. Devastating. Slide. I laid out the entire, sordid, undeniable timeline of his lies. I juxtaposed screenshots of his heartfelt texts to me about needing solitude and space with date-stamped, geotagged evidence of his secret life with her. The soundtrack of soft, melancholic piano music continued to play, a horrifyingly ironic counterpoint to the ugly truth unfolding on the screen. The final slide was the screenshot of Brooke's mother's gushing, exclamation point-filled pregnancy announcement. And beneath it, I didn't write a single witty caption. I just filled the entire screen with a dictionary definition, in a large, bold academic font, gaslighting, verb, an insidious form of psychological manipulation in which a person or a group covertly sows seeds of doubt in a targeted individual, making them question their own memory, perception, or judgment. I clicked the remote one last time, and the screen went black. I nodded to the technician, and the house lights came up to their full, unforgiving, fluorescent brightness. The silence that filled that room was the loudest, most profound sound I have ever heard. It was thick with shock, humiliation, and dawning comprehension. Every single one of the 50 guests was staring at Liam and Brooke. Liam looked as if he had been flash-frozen, his face a bloodless mask of pure, unadulterated horror. Brooke had both hands over her mouth, and silent, fat, mascara-streaked tears were streaming down her face. She was looking at him with an expression of such utter betrayal and devastation. It was almost hard to watch. She wasn't just humiliated. She was learning the full scope of his deception at the exact same moment as a room full of strangers. I stood there for a long, pregnant beat, letting the tableau of their ruin burn itself into my memory. The vindication I had craved didn't feel like a fiery, triumphant explosion. It felt like a quiet, cold, clean click, like a dislocated joint being firmly and finally snapped back into its rightful place. I placed the remote control gently on the gift table, next to a pile of ridiculously tiny baby sneakers. I wish you both, I said, my voice perfectly even and clear, the life you truly deserve. And then I turned, and without looking back, I walked out of that restaurant, into the cool, crisp October air, took my first deep breath of freedom, and started the rest of my life. The aftermath was, as Chloe later described it to me over a much-needed bottle of wine, of biblical, epic proportions. They apparently left the party in total, crushing disgrace. His family, particularly his mother and his two older sisters, descended upon him with a righteous fury. He lost a lot of friends that day, good people who were disgusted not just by the cheating, but by the sheer, calculated psychological cruelty of his methods. He tried to contact me, of course. For about 48 hours, my phone was a relentless barrage of his impotent, narcissistic rage. Texts calling me a vindictive, evil psychopath. Hysterical voicemails where he screamed and cried, alternating between telling me I had ruined his life and begging me to understand his pain. It was pathetic, and it was the ultimate, final confirmation that I had done exactly the right thing. I blocked his number, his email, and every social media profile he had ever created. I heard through the grapevine that he and Brooke moved to another state, somewhere in the Midwest, a few months later, before the baby was even born. A fresh start, I suppose, away from the smoldering wreckage of his reputation. I truly hope, for the sake of their son, that he finally started doing some actual, honest healing. As for me, the revenge didn't magically heal my broken heart. That kind of pain doesn't just vanish. It takes time and work and patience. But it did something more important than instant healing. It gave me closure. It recentered my own narrative. I was no longer the tragic, discarded, pathetic secret in his hero's journey. I had seized the pen, and I had written my own ending, an ending where the truth, in all its ugly glory, was brought into the light. I moved back to Austin the following spring. I took a new, better marketing job downtown. I found a great apartment in South Congress with a big porch for Bowie. A few months after that, on a whim, I went to the city shelter and adopted a scruffy terrier mix and named him Ziggy. I decided my life needed more honest, uncomplicated, joyful love. It took a long time to trust again. More than anything, it took a long time to trust my own judgment, my own intuition, which I had so willingly silenced for so long. But I'm getting there. I learned that healing isn't a performance you put on for others. It's the quiet, grueling, solitary work you do in the dark, when no one is watching. And I learned that strength isn't about how much pain you can endure in silence. It's about knowing, with absolute certainty, when you have endured enough. So that's the whole story. Every last ugly, messy, complicated detail. The question I'm still left with, the one I turn over in my mind on quiet nights, is this. Was what I did an act of justice or an act of vengeance? Does a public lie necessitate a public reckoning? I'd genuinely love to hear what you think.